We are just 8 days away from the Cowboys season opener Thursday night to kick off the 2025 NFL season in filthy, ladies and gentlemen. Great to have you in the Love the Star podcast. I'm Eric Chiafalo of the G-Bag Nation alongside the Super Bowl winning scout, Bryan Broaddus. And the Cowboys have their initial 53-man roster. Yesterday was pretty crazy trying to piece everything together. We thought Winfrey wasn't on the team for a second. You knew he was on the team the whole time, but Twitter was thinking maybe he wasn't. Broaddus yesterday was crazy, but now we can start to finally get a vision for this football team.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a wild day yesterday when you have so many people, with information that's trying to get it out. Maybe they're right, maybe they're wrong. That's just kind of the way that we consume our media, and so. There was conversations that I had with people in the front office about Winfrey, about Houston, very early in the morning. And so I felt like, okay, this is going to go the right direction for those particular players. And then when you and I and Zach Wolchuk and Gavin Dawson, Lucius Alexander went on our show, there was some talk that it was not going to happen, that Winfrey, in fact, was going to be released. And then the discussion became, well, oh, geez, you're keeping Mazi Smith, you're letting Winfrey go. And then I quickly just pivoted back and I said to my guys, I'm like, listen, something changed about Winfrey. And they're like, no, he's on the team. So it sounds like that Winfrey thought he was off the team and communicated that to some writers. And then that's how some of the information got out. But no, everything was, they were my sources were surprised when I circled back and like, hey, is Winfrey not on the team? And they're like, no, he's on the team. What's going on? So, it's just kind of a crazy day. And that's just the way when you talk about whether it's cut down day, draft day, any major kind of event that happens in the National Football League and other sports as well, that this information is just, guys and gals trying to get stuff out. And, it sometimes it could end up going wrong. And then there has to be some corrections and things like that. And we had that case yesterday.
Well, it's a big sigh of relief once we got the official word for sure that Winfrey is on the team, which is great for the defensive line. An area of big concern going into the season for the Cowboys, the defensive tackles, but Winfrey's been a guy that has really stood out throughout training camp and throughout the preseason games as a guy who probably fits this Eberflus scheme as well as anyone does.
Yeah, and they're going to play a slant angle front is what they're going to do. They're not going to go toe-to-toe with people. They have a couple of bodies that if they want to play a little bit heavier, but it's unproven body of Jay Toya, and then it's the unproductive for the most part body of Mazi Smith. Those are the big body guys. So they're not going to line up and just try and hammer you up front. They're going to try and find ways to play the front with some angles, play gaps, and then have linebackers fill those various spots with their run defense and their fits. If Dallas is going to be really good on run defense this year, it is going to be about really a team defense type. That's going to be about the front seven. It's going to be about the safeties, and it's going to be about the corners being able to play that way.
So at defensive tackle, you have obviously Osa Diggs, you have Alman Thomas, Mazi Smith remains a Cowboy. You have the rookie Jay Toia, and then you have Perrion Winfrey as well. So that's what the defensive tackle room looks like. As you mentioned, James Houston, who's been a training camp and preseason standout on the edge, is able to make the roster as well. So you have Micah, Dante Fowler, Sam Williams, Marshawn Nealon, Donovan Ezaraku, and James Houston there on the edge. Were there any, just as you look at the way the roster is laid out right now, and again, this is the initial 53-man roster. There's still the waiver wire and scouring other teams' players that didn't make those respective rosters and seeing if you can upgrade your team a little bit there at the back end of the roster. So still a little bit of movement likely to be had, but as things stand right now, Broadus, is there any head scratchers to you? Is there any second guess specials of, man, I can't believe this guy's not on the roster, this guy is, anything like that? I know Mazi's the one that is the biggest one that Cowboys fans are like, I can't believe he's still here. But the fact that Winfrey's on the team, I think, makes up for it at least a little bit. But anything jump out to you about the initial 53?
Not really, and that's a terrible answer for somebody who does podcast work every day. But we talked about the potential of going with 9 offensive linemen and 11 defensive linemen. And, did Mazi cost you a potential wide receiver? Did Mazi cost you an offensive lineman? Did Mazi cost you the third quarterback? You just have to look at the positions where they went short. They're 2 quarterbacks, 9 offensive linemen. They usually go 10. Me personally, my experience, and it was a long time ago, but I think with team building, you have to think about 10 offensive linemen and 10 defensive linemen. Just a hard position to find during the season. It's difficult. And all of a sudden, now you're going, here's a situation where they moved on from Awesome Richards. Good for the Cowboys. If they were going to have to let Awesome Richards go, well, good for them for at least getting something for him. And then good for them working with a team like the New Orleans Saints, who potentially could be very bad. And if the Saints are bad and you're talking about 6th round picks, I'll say this again, this could very well be a pick that ends up like having a late 5. So if you're the Cowboys and you have, say you're fortunate and you have your own 5 and it's down the board, then you turn around and you start the top of the next round, you get back-to-back picks that way. That's a good recovery right there for the Cowboys for a particular player that, they were going to move on from. But you wonder, did having Mazi Smith on the team cost you, again, Brooks? Did he cost you Awesome Richards? Those are the things you have to ask yourself those questions.
Fairweather's another guy, Rivaldo Fairweather at tight end. I don't know, I don't know if he was given much consideration based on having Ferguson span forward and then their reluctance to move on from a guy like Scooney. But Fairweather was another guy who you felt like, man, you showed up. You did some nice things as a pass catcher in particular. Fairweather at the tight end position was a guy that popped a little bit throughout some of the preseason games. So that's another guy that you just see some of the talent, but hopefully he ends up on the practice squad as well. But yeah, I mean, that's where the questions lie. And I know the Mazi Smith stuff is frustrating. For some people, the Scooney stuff is frustrating, and I totally get it. It's one of the things we do admire about teams like Philadelphia when they draft Jalen Reagor instead of Justin Jefferson, and Jalen Rager's not a good player. You draft him in 2020, and then by 2022, he's a Minnesota Viking. It's like they're willing to turn and burn. They're willing to admit a mistake of sorts when it comes to the draft, because the draft is a crapshoot. I mean, that's just what it is. You're not always going to hit. Not every class can be outstanding. Not every first-round pick can be outstanding. But then hanging on to guys a little bit too long, I think the Cowboys fans, I know I feel that they latch on to, hey, we invested in this guy. We don't want to give up on him yet. And I get it. Maybe Mazi Smith can have a little bit of a better year, but I don't know how well he necessarily fits into this scheme either.
No.
I don't think he fits overly well in what they're trying to get done right now. So that's something that the Cowboys, they've consistently done that. And do you feel like that is a front office telling Brian Schottenheimer, hey, Mazi Smith's on your team?
I think there's, if Brian Schottenheimer was new to the organization, then I could see Brian Schottenheimer and that staff watching the tape and saying, well, I'm being really honest here. And I think Cowboy fans know this. There are some games where Mazi Smith actually showed up. It happened to be divisional games. It was tended to be against maybe some undersized players, some undersized centers and stuff like that. Whether it was Tyler Biotish, John Michael Smith, he's shown up against some smaller guys. And the one thing, and I was talking with Greg Ellis, he was here with me at Crown Global Media, our studio, and he and I were talking. He coached Mazi Smith last year, and he was talking about Mazi is extremely strong. Mazi is not quick. That's the biggest problem that Mazi has. Is you watch guys like, you watch the bigger guys that they have. Even JT is quicker off the ball than Mazi Smith is. But Mazi Smith, his entire career at Michigan, was played as a two-gap scheme. So he was drafted, and I really do believe this. He was drafted by Will McClay for Dan Quinn. And now Dan Quinn's gone, and Jeff Zugina comes in, Mike Zimmer comes in. They get a little something out of Mazi. Now he's got to start all over with the other. I'm not making excuses for Mazi Smith, but I think maybe all along Mazi Smith was a bad fit. I'm not just saying this year. I'm saying that Dan Quinn obviously had a thought about what Mazi Smith could do in his defense. There's no question. He had an idea of like, hey, I could do this, because Will McClay and Dan Quinn are best friends. I mean, and I guarantee you, if there's probably a thought that Will McClay would have loved to have seen Dan Quinn replace Mike McCarthy. Will McClay enjoyed working with personnel with Dan Quinn. This is just a bad fit. And we saw the video of Will McClay standing in front of the draft room on draft night talking about the virtues of Mazi Smith. He did his own evaluation, but this is about, he did this for Dan Quinn. And so to me, Mazi Smith has just kind of always been, he's almost like he's orphaned. And I mean that, I'm not trying to belittle, orphanages or anything like that. I'm just saying he is a guy that always just has been kind of passed over and kind of, but he doesn't fit what they do. And so is that on him, or is that on the team that drafted him? They've tried to do some things with him. He just doesn't have the skill set to be able to do what they want him to do. And that's the unfortunate thing, and so having him on the team right now, is it a bad thing? No, but did it cost him another roster spot? Did it, if it's, I look at it as like, he's just going to have to make do with what he does. That they're going to have to, once again, try and figure out how to play him. If Perion Winfrey is a better one technique, or JT's a better one technique, then by all means, Mazi Smith needs to be inactive every week. And if Mazi Smith becomes the 53rd player on your roster, if they want to go out and get Okoye from the Ravens or something like that today, if they put in a claim and they all of a sudden get awarded a defensive tackle, then okay, where's that going to come from? Where's that release going to come from? I would hope that it would be for the player that doesn't really fit their scheme right now. That's Mazi Smith.
Yeah. And you mentioned the Ravens defensive tackle CJ Okoye, and he's a guy that is just an absolute, just a mammoth of a human being.
Yeah.
And it was just a numbers game with Baltimore, because they have a great defensive line, great defensive tackle room. And so he did not make their initial 53-man roster. So he's a guy that, we saw firsthand when Baltimore came to AT&T Stadium. We knew that was a team that we were going to have to monitor once cuts were made, because they have so many good players on that roster. CJ Okoye was right there at the top of the list of guys that we were all going to be interested in, a true nose tackle. And he fits the bill for everything you would want in that particular position, something the Cowboys don't really have right now. And Nick Harris of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram said that they are doing their diligence on CJ Okoye, whatever that means. But the Cowboys are 12th in the waiver order. So if they want to put a claim in for a guy like that, then I think Cowboys fans would be very excited. We would all be very excited because you have a true nose tackle and one tech. But at the same time, based on what Eberflus is trying to do with the slant front and just playing undersized, like does he even want a big nose tackle? Like I don't even know if he wants one or if he's just having to do the things defensively right now because they don't have one.
Yeah, I think right now it's like he's having to play this way because the unknown of Mazi Smith, or I shouldn't say the unknown, I should say the lack of consistency from Mazi Smith to be that type of player. B, what Jay Toya, what he's as a rookie, what do you have with him? You know? And so I think Eberflus is just trying his best to play with what he has currently. And if they could kind of piece some things together or some guys develop along the way, if JT develops and they claim a guy and that guy develops, then, now you could play a little bit more probably how he wants to play. But Eberflus is an attack gap guy.
Mm-hmm.
He is a get up to this is the Cowboy fans know this well. You've seen this. You've seen this with Rod Marinelli. It's like play the run on the way to rushing the passer. The biggest thing that could help the Cowboys defense this year is their offense. Their defense is going to be getting attacked. And it's great that that Diggs is working his way back into the mix. It's terrible that Micah Parsons likely is not going to play. If you have this pass rush and you get an offense that's scoring points, that pass rush could be really effective. We've seen it work here before. And if you go back to the days of Tampa, that's how they did. They found a way to get ahead, and then they sicked that pass rush on you. Dallas has got the kind of guys that are capable of doing that, but without Micah Parsons, that's going to be a daunting task.
Yeah, no question. Let's go ahead and get into a little bit of Micah stuff. The Diggs situation, which is a little bit more positive than I think we were anticipating, and maybe some other injury updates with Blue and Guyton. You're listening to the Love of the Star podcast. Love of the Star is an Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's start with the good news. It looks like Diggs is, he's off the PUP list. So now he's calling it just in conditioning mode. He feels great. Physically, he's just trying to get sort of into game shape is the way that I'm understanding it. And I guess there's an outside chance he could be available for night one in Philadelphia, but are they aiming for a particular week or game that we could see Trayvon Diggs?
Yeah, this is what I've been told about the situation. And you mentioned he had to get off the PUP list so he could be available for ramping up in practice. So he could be available for walkthroughs. He could be available for practices. The plan for him was for him to work out Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday while everybody's gone. The league has a deal where players have to have 3 days off now, and so the Cowboys are taking their days. Diggs, from what I've been told, is now working with the training staff and working with the weight staff to get his conditioning up. The thought about Diggs, and again, this is what I've been told, this is his 5th week of conditioning, and by the second game of the year, it'll be almost 8 weeks. That's kind of their magic number right now. They're trying to get his conditioning to 8 weeks is what they're trying to do. So we'll see about what happens in week one. Does it look like, maybe he could play some limited stuff. Maybe he could play some limited snaps. Maybe he could play in certain situations and things like that. My gut feeling right now is they're trying to get him to the week 2 game against the Giants. That's where, and you know what? I'm totally okay with that. And I know Philadelphia, it's a terrible matchup for Dallas right off the jump. Yeah. I think it's going to be a hornet's nest for them to have to deal. Hopefully things work out, but if they get Diggs back, say in week 2, well, now it's like you really haven't gone through. I mean, if he were to come back in week 6, week 7, or something like that, the lion's share, like half the season might be gone, and all of a sudden you're like, now, But what if somebody's playing really, really well? Now it's like, well, how do you navigate this? Who's going to sit? With Diggs coming back early, you get an idea like Diggs is going to be the guy. There's no question. And now you navigate around that. If it's Elam, Bland, Diggs, whoever, we'll see how this all plays out for them. Childers at the nickel. I mean, we'll see how it all plays out because you get Diggs back. You could kick Bland inside and play nickel and play with Elam, Bland, and Diggs, and you'll feel pretty decent about what you got there in the secondary.
For sure. I mean, this is all a huge positive when it comes to Diggs, and he's had a tough offseason in terms of just the narrative around him and the Joneses being frustrated that he was away from the team all offseason, rehabbing and punting on $500,000 to just stay in. I guess he was in Miami working out with his getting himself together. And last year when he was rehabbing, I don't think they were really impressed with the way that he attacked it. But he's clearly taken a much different, more professional approach this time around. And so, hey, tip of the cap to Diggs. We all have plenty of frustrations when it comes to Diggs on the field and the way he's done some things in the past. But for this situation right now, I do just want to say, hey, respect to him because he's clearly attacked the rehab in a way that's going to have him returning to the field for the Cowboys much sooner than I think any of us anticipated.
Yeah.
I would have guessed October, best case scenario. Can we see Diggs in October? And now you're telling me week 2. That would be, I mean, that's a huge benefit. So, I mean, kudos to Diggs for putting the chip on his shoulder and saying, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and attack this the right way. And so having him back would be huge. As you mentioned, then it gives you the chance to go Elam and Diggs on the outside and then having Bland in the nickel. As it comes to Philadelphia night 1, you move on from McQuamu, you move on from Kaman Hall. So is your best guess for night 1 in Philadelphia, Bland and Elam on the outside? Diggs still misses that first game, and so you have Zion Childress, the rookie undrafted free agent out of Kentucky, as your nickel corner. Is that your best guess on how night 1 looks?
That's my best guess right now, unless somebody tells me that Diggs is, unless they have a plan for Diggs. The one thing that the Eagles will do is they will force you to have to cover 3 wide receivers, the way that they play. And so if in fact Diggs was available, I don't know if they want Diggs out there playing 60-something snaps. No. That I don't think that. And that's the unfortunate thing right now. And that but as you mentioned, good for Diggs for, getting the rehab or taking the rehab seriously and getting back. It's going to be Childers. It's going to be Childers. And there's some positive things about Childers that the one thing that he did is he got a ton of work in training camp. He also got a ton of work playing these preseason games. Mm-hmm. So, it's not like all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, he came from nowhere. He was a better player than Hall. He just was. Hall was the guy that they were trying to make the nickel corner. And not that Hall was terrible. Childers is just a better player. Childers is a better player. And so the thing that he will help with is that if he's playing slot and you get a lot of condensed formation from the Eagles and they try and run the ball with Barkley, you got a guy right there, Childers, that's willing to tackle. You got a guy that's willing to step up. And the one thing you have to do when you play the Eagles is you cannot let Saquon Barkley get ahead of steam running the football. We've seen the Cowboys when they've played against him with the Giants and how when you get bodies on him quick, that makes him a different player. And so it's going to be imperative as we get closer to this game and we talk about it and break it down of getting bodies across the line of scrimmage before he even has a chance to get going. Because when he's coming downhill at you, it's a problem. But Childers will help you in the run game because he will be a guy that fits when needed to fit. He's not going to bust assignments and be in the wrong spot. If it's his responsibility is outside C gap, we've seen him play C gap, read it, and then slant inside and make a tackle. That will be a positive for this Cowboys defense.
No question. That's one of the things that jump out immediately when you watch Zion Childress play football and you respect
Physical player.
physical player. Absolutely.
Yeah.
He wants to get in there. He'll stick his nose in there. He will tackle. You can blitz him off the edge and he can wreak some
Right.
havoc in the backfield a little bit. Eberflus is going to want to mix that in as well. So, and that's the thing about playing nickel. And it's why guys like Deron Bland don't really want to play in there, because even though Bland's great at it and he's willing to say, hey, I don't really like doing this, but I will because I'm a dog and I'm a true football player. But as a nickel corner, it's why it's one of the toughest positions to play in football, because you got to be great in coverage, two-way go for the slot receivers, and then you also got to be willing to be physical and play in the run game, stick your nose in there, and Zion Childress does that. So that is definitely a plus, but he's also going to be a guy that the Eagles probably identify immediately as, let's attack him and see what he's made of, certainly in coverage as well. So we'll see how he acquits himself night one, but he's definitely earned this opportunity. We're all happy for him. Looking forward to seeing what jersey number he wears, because there's no way he's keeping that 48. Come on now. He ain't keeping that 48. Ezraku's another guy that we know. We sat down in Oxnard. He's not a fan of the 41 that he's been wearing throughout training camp and preseason.
Yeah.
So we'll see what number he chooses. We got word from Jaden Blue. Looks like he's going back to the college number 23, hunting on the 34. I think that's a good move for him. He looks great in it. And I know he got banged up again. And that's the most frustrating part about Jaden Blue right now, is him getting these getting a little bit nicked up. But in the brief stints that we got to see him the other night versus the Falcons, man, you can tell the explosiveness. He scores the touchdown on the goal line, and it just looks a little bit different when the ball's in his hands, like he's firing out of a cannon there. So hopefully, do we know if he's what availability situation he's
there doesn't seem to be any setbacks with him right now.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, it's interesting. I was talking with Bucky Buchanan, the equipment man for the Cowboys, yesterday, because I was asking about jersey numbers. So, as we tape this show today on Wednesday, today will be the day that they get. So we'll know about Ezraku and Childers and all those guys. We'll should get a fresh batch of jersey numbers here mid-afternoon.
One more injury update before we get to Micah here a little bit. Tyler Guyton, are we optimistic that he's going to be ready for night one?
Yeah, they're kind of working that direction. We'll see how things play out, but he's back on the practice field like Diggs. We'll see if the question that they have to ask themselves in week one, Tyler Guyton, from what the limited practices you've seen him, better than where you are right now with Nate Thomas. That's Nate Thomas has been going the entire training camp. He's played preseason games. He's conditioned. Is he a better option right now as opposed to what you might get with Guyton, who hasn't had the reps, trying to work on his conditioning? And those are the questions you got to kind of ask yourself. Which direction you want to go with. I feel like that Guyton is the more talented player, but is his conditioning there, and is all the practice stuff that he's missed, is that going to affect him? They're not going to have a lot of opportunities for him to go out there. Now they can bring him onto the field and do some work with him and have some rushers and things like that, and try and get him some pass sets and things like that. But with the players having time off and stuff, man, it's going to be a little bit of a stretch for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting kind of dynamic that they're in, trying to figure it out. I mean, if you feel great about where he's at from a conditioning standpoint, just a physical health standpoint, I wouldn't have an issue with them wanting to get him out there for sure. But Nate Thomas has done enough. You're going to have to help him. I mean, for sure, but you're probably going to have to help Guyton a little bit as well. So it's not like it's a perfect situation either way with either one of those guys. But Thomas has done enough to where if Guyton is just not quite ready for game one, you can say, hey, Thomas, you've done enough. You can go out there and we have some semblance of trust in you to go ahead and play 4 quarters of respectable football there. So that'll be an interesting one leading up to the game. I could see that being some level of a game time decision of like, how are they going to approach it? at the left tackle spot. But good news on Guyton, though, overall, the fact that he's on the field now moving around, and there's at least a chance he could play in Philadelphia for week 1. Okay, let's get to the Micah stuff and then a little bit of a mailbag here. Love the Star podcast, Love the Stars and Odyssey podcast. You can find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. The Micah situation brought us. Okay, so he's kind of pouty there during the final preseason game on the training table, halfway falling asleep, just disinterested in everything that's going on. And that's certainly disrespectful to the guys that are out there fighting for their jobs and their football lives. So certainly a bad look, no matter how you slice it. Nobody likes a pouty adult. Like, you're an adult and you're pouting around right now, even if we're all kind of on your side, big picture. That was definitely a bad look. You had Brian Schottenheimer yesterday, Cowboys head coach, at the podium talking about how they had Schottenheimer and Micah had an hour-long conversation, and Parsons never gave any assurances that he will practice. He did recently have the MRI on his back, and more tests are possible, but he is medically cleared to practice at this point. And Brian Schottenheimer said, quote, "We want him out there as soon as possible. The best way to get good at football is to play football. There will be a ramp-up program for him." Schottenheimer's still confident Parsons will play in week 1, but I heard you slip that in earlier on the show just a few minutes ago that you're feeling less and less confident that Mike is going to be suited up in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I do. And, we'll see. I think the body language that we saw from Micah Parsons, that we've really seen the last couple of weeks from him, has all stemmed from the conversations that now Jerry Jones has had with various media outlets. The comments about he and Micah, he felt like he was dealing, I believe Micah's demeanor right now is a guy that's pretty sad, because I feel like that Micah put himself in this place with Jerry Jones, and now he's having to deal with that. He's having to deal with he knows he got into an arena that that maybe he felt like that he was comfortable doing, and Jerry Jones even said this. Micah Parsons is a smart negotiator. He even talked about Michael Irvin. He talked about Charles Haley. He kind of put Micah into a class of guys that Jerry's dealt with as a player that people feel comfortable, that he felt comfortable doing. And so to me, I'm to that point where I'm watching Micah. I'm watching the body language. I think he's really depressed. I think he's depressed about the situation. I think his best remedy for his body language and stuff would be to go sign this contract, to find a way to tell David Mulugheta, let's get this done. I'd like the security. I want to get this done. Let's talk about it. Let's get it hammered out, because every day that goes by, it's wearing on him more and more. And you're starting to see him just kind of continue to take steps back. Like, he is not interested, because he knows that he made a mistake. And I'm not just saying that, Jerry Jones made a mistake too, but Jerry is from a different era. Jerry is from an era where he dealt with people one-on-one and stuff. And is it right? No, but that's what he's done. And Micah, took an opportunity to step into that arena. And Jerry Jones has been talking about that, when Micah came back second day, talking about it again. He put himself in that arena. That's why Jerry feels like that he was negotiating with a guy one-on-one. And I think that this whole thing, the mistakes that maybe Micah Parsons made, and I mean mistakes in a way that he went in there and did this, is weighing on him. And I think that's why we're seeing it's emotionally draining, and it's causing a little bit of depression for him, I'm sure. But the best way to do this is to say, okay, I got to put this behind me and find a way to get me and my agent in there and start to talk to Jerry Jones again.
Yeah, I agree. At some point, somebody's going to have to step up and make that first call. And right now, Jerry's the one with the leverage because he has Micah under control seemingly for the next 3 seasons. And he knows that, and he's lent voice to that. So if Micah is ready to just say, all right, forget all this, I just want the security, seems like they had a pretty fair deal as far as we know
Yeah.
about it from
Yeah.
a dollar standpoint. Like he was
Yeah.
going to get a respectable offer there. They weren't totally lowballing him. We don't know all the details of the intricacies of the contract can get pretty crazy on you. But from what we know about it, it was a relatively fair deal. And if Micah just wants that security, then yeah, I think you should go ahead and pick up the phone and go ahead and try and make that
Yeah.
happen. Otherwise, you just have to flip a switch in your brain and just say, all right, forget this. I'm going to use it to fuel me. And let's just try and put this on the back burner right now and let me go out there and have a great season. But he doesn't look like he's in that mode right now.
No, he's depressed, and he's depressed at how this happened. And and you've got Jerry Jones is full on attacking, and that's not good. I mean, it's reminding Micah Parsons every day that Jerry Jones speaks. It reminds Micah Parsons that he probably was in the wrong. And I'm not saying that Jerry Jones is not in the wrong, but if somebody's going to negotiate with you and step in there and have a couple of days of talking about it, you got to feel like that. Okay, yeah, we've got something going here. We're talking about this. Yeah, and like I say, Jerry Jones was very complimentary of Micah Parsons' ability to handle his business. Is it the right way to go? Probably not. I mean, it's not. But when you step in that arena with a guy that is a professional, he's done deals all his life. That's the thing. That's the problem that you run into. You could be the best negotiator in the world and have to deal with a Jerry Jones or one of these people, and maybe you slip up a little bit. And I think this is where Micah's at right now. I think he's me personally, there's people out there that says Micah, is, I mean, David Mulugeta is a really, really good agent. And all of a sudden, Cincinnati got a deal with T. Higgins because David Mulugeta, they moved on. I hope that's not the case. I feel like that, to me, that they're in a situation where, that's not going to, I don't think that's going to happen. But, man, it's out there for stuff like that. But I think Micah needs to, I think he needs to just say, okay, made a mistake here. Let's try and get back to the table. Let's try and hammer this thing out.
Okay, Dean Julia mailbag time brought us, and we're getting plenty of questions from, Robert DiCenzo, John Hyla Jr., Trey Allen. We have Frankie Kenneth, Jake Poole. A lot of these people are asking similar questions about how does this work if they do end up going and claiming somebody off the street, like we'll say CJ Okoye from the Ravens, the guy that we all would love to have at nose tackle. Do they have to cut somebody?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Because I know they have guys that are on the roster that are ultimately going to be starting on the IR, right? Guys like
nope. Well,
but something like that. But you would actually have to cut somebody.
Yeah, you have to put. They've already done stuff with the IR. I mean, they've got guys like Moffitt. He's already on IR. You're going to have to take somebody from the 53-man roster that's on it to be able to do this.
Okay. And do you have an idea? Would it be a position? So if you bring in a certain position, are you going to cut somebody from that same position?
Not necessarily. You just have to account for the player. If there could be a team that there could be multiple claims for a player, and the priority will determine where that player goes. So say you're claiming against the Patriots and people that drafted ahead of you, then they're awarded those players. They're awarded first. They get first dibs on those players. If you, in fact, the time that when the league says you have this player, he's your property, they're going to ask you, who are you going to cut? And you immediately have to put a name in. It's not like, oh, we're waiting around. It could be any position. It could be, but you have to take somebody off your current 53-man roster in order to get that player on.
Okay. Yeah. And if you sign a defensive tackle, everybody's going to be I mean, the Cowboys fans are going to be like, okay, then Mazi should be the guy that goes, but that's not necessarily how it would.
It could be. Yeah, we don't know if Mozzie's the 53rd player or what. That I don't see them carrying 12 defensive linemen. I think that would be kind of a little bit of a stretch there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it could be there. You could to get this player. Is Winfrey that guy? Is Houston that guy? I mean, you're going to have to come up with a player, and especially if it's on the defensive line.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Let's see. KJ asking if we're without Parsons, Diggs, and Guyton in week 1, which of the replacements need to have their best game to have a shot at winning? Who would be that? Would it be, hey, Nate Thomas, you need to go be a beast? Would it be, hey, Zion Childress or Kyer Elam, you need to go be a beast, or Ezeraku, Fowler, these edge rushers?
Yeah, it's going to be about the pass rush. They're going to have to find a way. They can't allow. One of the things, I went back and watched the Philadelphia game last year with Dallas that was played at AT&T Stadium, not the game at the very end, but I went back and watched, and the guy that had a really, really good game was Overstreet. Overshown. So I'd say Overstreet. I'm thinking of the secondary catch, but Overshown. Excuse me. Overshown was the guy that had the really good game. I mean, his blitzing, his pressure, you're going to need something like that. They did a good job against Micah. He was dealing with double teams, triple teams. I mean, it was they had an idea, but Overshown was the one that was effective in this football game. So they're going to need somebody that you're really not thinking that much about. But I think it's gonna have to come down to the Ezerakos, the Fowlers, Sam Williams if you play. That's where it's going to probably come down to.
Yeah, maybe Maris Leofau being that blitzing linebacker, like Overshown is.
Overshown was really good in that game. He caused a lot of problems for the blocking scheme Jordan Mailata didn't play in that game. So the Cowboys really didn't take advantage of not having him in there, but we'll see how that, with Dickinson being out potentially for the Eagles, can they take advantage of the guard spot? That's something that needs to affect the middle of that pocket. That's kind of where they were getting after Hurts in this game, was attacking the middle with Overshown.
Daniel Henshaw's asking about the special teams coordinator Nick Sorensen replacing Bones Fossil, and do we have any concerns or any? I mean, is there a difference there? It is interesting because Sorensen was the defensive coordinator for the Niners last year.
I think the only difference is that Bones Fossil had way too much control and way too much power to do so. I mean, I think McCarthy allowed him to kind of run roughshod there. Mm-hmm. I don't think Shoddy's going to allow the Sorensen to be that type. Now, excuse me, if they want to do something, I'm sure that they have a plan. Maybe that Shoddy will be aggressive in that way, but Bones was at times, I thought, just out of control with the stuff that he was doing.
Tyler G is asking if you could pick one player who's never been named to a Pro Bowl to play at a Pro Bowl level this season to help this team, who would that player be? And I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking Tyler Guyton, because if Guyton's a Pro Bowl player, you got Tyler Smith. You feel pretty good about everybody else on the offensive line for the most part. If Tyler Guyton at left tackle is a Pro Bowl caliber player, that's going to go a long way for you. Maybe you would go one of the running backs or somebody defensive
linebacker. One of these linebackers, it would be really, really a good thing to do. Maybe, there's the corner. How about what if Elam were to play really, really well? That would be a positive for you.
Yeah, I was thinking Elam too, because if you're going to get Diggs back, and then you could have Bland kick into the nickel, and if Elam's playing at a Pro Bowl level. Man, that would go a really, really long way for you. There's so many guys that you could pick here. I think I would just ultimately go Guyton, but Elam would probably be second on the list there.
Yeah.
For me. Okay. Well, there it is. Thanks to the great questions here in the Dean Julia mailbag. Love the Star podcast in the books. And now we have our sights set on week 1 in Philadelphia. The next time we get aboard the Love of the Stars ship here, we will be breaking down these Eagles and prepping our bodies for night 1 Thursday night at Lincoln Financial Field. Broadus, I can't wait, man. It's here. Let's do it.
It is here. Thank you,
All
Eric.
right. Thank you so very much. We'll be back with more Cowboys content in the coming days.